Hello and welcome to Wilderness TV. Today we're on the Upper Avon in Wiltshire, fly fishing for grayling with Ben Bangham. Ben's going to go through the techniques he uses for a successful grayling fly fishing adventure. The beach stretches for over 5 miles through some of the most beautiful and serene countryside Wiltshire has to offer. The beat is unstocked, so all the fish we catch are going to be wild.
Well, today we're very lucky. We're on the Rushall beat of the River Avon, right at the top near Pewsey, and today we're going to be going after grayling. It's mid-October. The trout season is come to an end or coming to an end depending where you are, and grayling are beginning to feed. So hopefully today we'll catch a few big fish. Fingers crossed. It's looking good. The river's coloured slightly. So that might hinder us a little bit. It's the first colour we've had of the season, so it normally knocks them off the feeding a little bit. But there's plenty of fish in here, so we'll definitely catch some, and hopefully we'll have 1 or 2 big ones as well. Today we're going to be using 2 techniques. The first one is going to be called the duo, which involves fishing a dry fly and a nymph. It's very easy to do, very effective. Anyone can do it, so we'll be using that. And also something a little bit more sort of sophisticated, which is a French leader using 2 nymphs. So in a bit I'll take you through those setups and show you how we do it. The reason we're using 2 is because we've got slightly different bits of water here, and different techniques suit different bits of water. So if you can do, I tend to take a couple of rods out with a few setups on, so if I come across any water I can use a preferred technique and hopefully catch a few more fish. But we'll be concentrating on the duo because it is the most common, it's the easiest to do, and it's incredibly effective. Got a bit of colour in the water. We had some rain last night. It's the first colour of the year, and it normally takes them a few days to get used to it, so that's going to hinder us slightly. It's still very warm for October, so the trout are quite active, so I'm sure we'll catch a few of those. We'll probably take a couple on the dry fly of the duo, and there's a few roach and rudd in here, but I don't think we'll see many of those. Today the 2 things that will come up against us in terms of catching grayling will be the trout and the slight colour of the river. This is a chunky little grayling. Lovely fish, as you can see, fought quite well. Had me in a bit of bother. Disco shrimp hanging out of its mouth. Yeah, it's a fat bugger. Just what you want. Lovely colours.
Look at the colour of that, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Lovely colours.
Little female.
That's a female, short fin, female. So hopefully we'll get a male. See the colours on him in a minute. But let's get her back. so we've just taken 5 minutes out and I'll show you exactly what I'm using. This is the duo rod that I'm using. It's a Hardy, it's an 8'6" 4-weight floating line. I tend to use a slightly heavier rod to get the turnover when I'm using heavy nymphs. I've got about 6 foot of tapered leader, tapering down, to which I tie my dry fly, which is big, bushy, bright, very visible, floats like a cork, which is just what you want for duo fishing. It's not really designed to take fish, although it will take fish, as you'll see. Onto the back of this, I tie directly onto the bend of the hook with a 6-turn tucked blood knot, because that stays pretty firm. And then I've got 2.5–3 foot of leader. This is 0.12 diameter leader onto my favourite grayling bug, which is the disco shrimp. As you can see, this one is a little bit eaten at the moment. We've had some good fish on it, so it's showing a few battle scars. But that's my normal setup. You can fish the dry fly off a dropper, but this is far more sensitive, so, and very, very easy to do. As I say, tied directly onto the back of the hook, a little bit of leader down to your fly, and as you can see, it's very easy to fish, very, very effective. So that's the first setup, that's the duo setup. So onto my other setup. This is for French nymphing, slightly different setup. So here I have a 9'9" 2-weight rod, very, very light, very, very whippy, very, very sensitive. I've got a check nymph line down into a fluoro tapered leader, which then terminates in an indicator, which is fluoro pink and fluoro yellow line, and I've just coloured in a bit of black halfway through just to separate the colours, make them really visible. Onto this is a micro ring, straight onto my leader, and I've got 2 flies on. I've got disco shrimp again, because it really is, and just an incredible grayling catcher, and then just one of my red tags, silver bead red tag, nice and bright. Grayling love it, trout love it. It's yet again a very good fly. But as you can see, it's a very simple setup, just basically a great big leader. If you can get to grips with it, it's incredibly effective. It's the one way, I would say, if you want to go and catch numbers of fish, then French leader is the way for most of our rivers. It's not fantastic on the chalk stream sometimes, but if you're going to catch fish, it is a duo. I mean, the French leader, very simple to set up. The only really specialist kit is the rods. A lot of people use 10-foot 3-weights, 10-foot 4-weights. They're all fine. I like a slightly lighter rod because it's easier to hold a 2-weight all day. But if you've got a 10-foot 3-weight, 10-foot 2-weight, you know, give it a go. There's some great rods out there for not a lot of money, and it's well worth getting to grips with because it's a real fish killer. Just make sure that you're nice and balanced, because you're going to be holding it a long time and you're holding it at arm's reach as well. So make sure it's nice and balanced, the leader's nice and smooth. As I say, start off with 2 flies. You can fish 3 doing this, but I would start off on 2. It's a lot easier, and I generally have my heavier fly down on the point, and then the dropper is a slightly lighter fly, although you can change this around depending on the situation. But that's how I normally fish it, and it's absolutely devastating. I've caught fish all over the world doing it, and if you haven't given it a go, definitely give it a go.
What about weights of the flies? What colours your decision on what fly to put on?
That's a good question. The rule of thumb for me is if I haven't had a bite or I haven't hit the bottom in 5 casts, then there's something wrong. Either my flies aren't getting down well enough, or I'm not fishing the right area. So always doctor your sort of weight of flies to basically be trundling the bottom. With this kind of setup, you can feel the flies bouncing on the bottom. Make sure you're down near the bottom essentially. That's where the grayling are, especially when the water's a bit cold. The trout are down there now as well. So make sure the flies are on the bottom. As I say, if you're not hooking the bottom at least, or feeling it at least once in 5 casts, then put a heavier fly on. You need to get down, it's key to get down. And that's how I determine what weight fly I use. It's if I'm touching bottom.
Okay, so that's a weights fly. What about the colour? Does it, how does the fly colour vary?
Everyone's got patterns that they like to use, that they got confidence in using. I would say go with those first. Some people love orange, some people love red, some people love pink. It really is. It's more about confidence. If you've got confidence in colour, if you've got confidence in a fly, tie that fly up in a few different weights. You know that you're going to fish it with confidence, and that's far more important than the actual colour in my eyes. I like the sort of reds and the sort of oranges, but I've got friends that solely fish pinks, and they catch just as many fish as I do, even through the same water. So don't get too bogged down with colour. Just get a pattern that you're confident in and start fishing those, because you'll catch a lot more if you've got confidence in your flies than if you're just going through the motions with something you think should work. So always fish with a fly you got confidence in.
How do you work a piece of water like this when you don't know it?
It's a good question. Watercraft is absolutely key when it comes to fishing. I think the best way to do is certainly on stretches like this, get in and try and think like a fish almost. So have a look for cover, look for breaks in the current, look for just things out of the ordinary, and concentrate on those. The fish will sit behind cover, or they'll sit in just special places, shall we say. Areas that are slightly different, so dips in the bottom, in the topography of the riverbed. Something that will have more food, so back eddy where the food suddenly slows down and becomes more accessible for the fish, or on the edge of a current where they can sit quite comfortably, but if something whizzes past them, they can just nip into the current and grab it. So have a look at the river, read it properly. Always fish the edges. If there's a bit of depth there's always going to be fish in the edges. That's where most of the food drops in. If you can see some weed sticking out and it's got a little back eddy behind it, fish behind it. Also fish in front of it. If you see a boulder in the river, don't just fish behind it. Put your flies in front of it. They'll sit in front of an obstruction as well. But look for the lines in the river. So look for what we call the food lines or the feed lines. So the breaks in the currents, the eddies, the obstructions, the banks, all things that are worth targeting. There are very few areas that are just sort of very, very flat water, as we call it. There's a few areas on this bit, and they can be very prolific, and that's a bit more of a chuck it and chance it, just move up, fan casting, trying to find the fish. But if there is an obstruction to cast to, then always cast to that. That's where the majority of the fish are going to be hanging out. And with grayling, it's important that if you catch one, give exactly the same spot another go. They are shoal fish. They haven't shoaled up properly yet. It's not quite cold enough, but they're slowly beginning to. But certainly in the depths of winter, they're a real shoal fish, and you can catch a dozen or so from the same shoal. So if you find that break in the current that's holding them, then concentrate on it for a bit. You could get some good rewards from it. Right, so enough of that. Let's go fishing. Let's catch some more. Well, hasn't been a bad day. We've had plenty of grayling, not as many as I'd have liked and not the size that I wanted to show you, but we had some good sized fish and lost one or two decent fish. We had some stunning wild brownies as well, which is a bit of a bonus. The colour definitely knocked it on the head slightly. There's been some big numbers coming off and we caught a few today, but not as many. So once this drops out in a day or two or keeps coloured for 2 or 3 days, they'll get used to it and they'll start taking again. So I'll probably have to come back down in the next few days and try and catch a few more.
For some awesome winter grayling fly fishing, why not get in touch with Ben via his Facebook page at www.facebook.com/Ben Bangham Fly Fishing. A grayling permit for a day for this water costs about £20, but why not make the most of your trip and get Ben to guide you? Well, that's all for now, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on the next Wilderness TV fly fishing adventure.